Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. You'll find the links in the podcast description. I've got 4 other podcasts: the meditation, learn Polish, the awakening, and the crypto, as well as being a podcasting coach. You'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. Today, my guest in Africa, please welcome Frank Tsuro.
Yeah, good day from Johannesburg in South Africa. How are you?
I'm not too bad. So did I pronounce it correctly?
Absolutely. Well done. I'll give you Zimbabwean citizenship after this.
Brilliant. And just for the listeners that can't see it, it's actually got a Tsuro. So that's why it's yeah. So you might let the listeners know, who's Frank?
Frank, that's an interesting question. I'm always trying to figure out who is Frank and what is he all about. But I think I come from a beautiful country that's been ravaged by poor leadership. And so being lucky to have gone to a very good school and been exposed to good leadership, I think once I went out into the work world and I started experiencing a lot of the challenging leadership aspects that we find, I decided to make leadership development my business. And so Frank is on a mission to develop 100,000 honest leaders in the African continent. And so I do that in a variety of ways. I'm involved with a company called the Entrepreneurs Hub, and the aim of that company is to grow micro business owners into great business leaders on the continent. So I'm an advisory board chairman in that organization. I'm also involved with an organization called Toastmasters, and I've been involved in a number of capacities. My last one, I was a region advisor for all our senior leaders in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Pakistan. But on a day-to-day basis, I wake up and go to my business, which is called Frankly Speaking. And there I help senior business leaders achieve alignment on their strategic intent and alignment between themselves and their teams so that they can achieve the results that they seek to achieve. So that's Frank.
Excellent. No, and I love your mission. And I know that you started speaking at an early age. So I think about 7 or something like that. So you might let me know a bit about that.
Yes. I started public speaking at age 7. In fact, it actually started off, I was in the quiz team, and out of there, somebody thought I would make a great person in debate. So I then joined the debate club. And after you give a few debates, they think, oh, okay, you could give a public speech. So I then got involved with public speaking at that very early age. And so, yeah, I've got a history with public speaking from a very young age.
Oh, brilliant. And did you keep doing the debating? Because I think that's a great way of actually thinking on your feet as well.
Yes. I actually did debating more into high school and even ended up becoming the debate captain for my high school. During that time, I really enjoyed it, and I never really appreciated the value of debating until I got into society, and people admired my critical thinking skills, my ability to articulate, my position and all that. It was one of the most brilliant, and I'd recommend it to anyone who still has a chance to.
Brilliant. So just because I highly recommend it as well. We've done it a few times in the Toastmasters just to kind of get creative and everything. But what tips, especially being the captain, and I mean, you've done a lot of it, for somebody debating to prepare themselves, what would you actually advise people to do?
I think it's with debate, it's very key that it's not so much more about the topic that you're given, because as we know, you're just given a topic which doesn't necessarily represent what you may think. But I think the idea is to demonstrate your ability to think and to see how, maybe help the audience see things differently. I found that, a lot of times we were given topics that I did not necessarily agree with, but they allowed me to see things differently. And especially in a world where we're trying to celebrate diversity and particularly diversity of thought, I think it's a good way to see the world in a different way. So the first thing that I would advise anyone who's going into a debate or part of a debate team is never to worry too much about the topic, but worry more about how they could think differently and present their ideas as eloquently as possible, which leads to some basic public speaking tips that I tend to give anyone, because I don't know if you know this, but I started my career in coaching, particularly as an executive speech coach. And one of the things I say to people is what qualifies you to stand in front of any audience is you've got to have something of value to say to that audience. So when you're on stage, it's like an opportunity to lead. It's an opportunity to inspire or motivate that audience. And so it's very important to have clarity as to what message you want to put out there or what position you'd like the audience to appreciate. And the more succinct you are in doing so, the clearer your argument will probably reach your audience, because it's not a lack of ideas that makes people lose debates, but sometimes it's the inability to articulate themselves in a great manner. Then the last thing that I'd share is the importance of structuring your argument in such a way that it's well received by your primary audience, and also in the end give them a call to action, what you want the audience to know, think, feel, or do after listening to your argument. I think that is quite crucial in making sure that your message gets delivered in the best possible way and your audience truly know what they need to do, having heard what you've had to say.
Excellent, excellent. So with the Toastmasters, because most people go into Toastmasters terrified of speaking and they kind of overcome that journey. But obviously you were a competent speaker when you went in. So I was just curious, why did you join Toastmasters?
Well, actually, I was going through a point in my life, growing up, all I ever wanted to be was to be a chartered accountant. And so straight out of high school, I actually got an opportunity to practice my training contract as a chartered accountant with one of the big firms, Ernst & Young, in my hometown. And after a while, they gave me an offer, which didn't quite align with what I wanted at the time. In fact, when I look back, I think I was crazy to turn down that offer. But during that time, I felt like it didn't work well for me. So Toastmasters kind of came on radio at a time when I was just trying to look for something else to do whilst I was studying. And at that time, I'd also gotten a part-time job. And so I thought I could join Toastmasters, and I was particularly intrigued because I wanted to be a world champion of public speaking. How far that went is another story, but I joined Toastmasters to become a world champion of public speaking.
And I'm just curious because I've entered a good few competitions, and with the humor speech, I got into the final of 5 countries, but there's plenty of times that I would do a speech and I'd have 20 people in the audience coming up to me saying I was robbed. And it's structured in such a way that sometimes someone does all the antics, does all the acting, but their message isn't really making change. And it's a shame because they should really take that into account.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I would want to say some unsolicited advice. The best advice, if you want to win something or achieve something, is to start it. You'll be surprised that I actually never have competed in the speech contest ever since joining Toastmasters. For some reason, once I joined Toastmasters, I was sucked into the leadership aspect. But I've had the opportunity, once I started my career in speech coaching, I had the opportunity to coach maybe my best success story in Toastmasters, a 3-time Southern African champion of public speaking and a semi-finalist in the World Championships of Public Speaking, Lloyd Mugabe. And obviously, I went through him a lot of judging ups and downs because, like you said, you come up with a brilliant speech and maybe it's been laughed somewhere, but it doesn't really fit in elsewhere. And I think, like you rightfully say, I think in the judging criteria itself, the message is the most important thing. And there are many things that can get in the way of the audience receiving your message. Number one, which might be the clarity of message, which usually at the main or the big stages, the message is usually good. But it's also about how the message resonates with the audience, which is why in public speaking, we say the number one rule is know your audience. Sometimes you may all have great messages, but someone just comes with a message that we really need to hear in the now and can help me in the now. And you know how we make decisions as human beings. We've got the emotional brain and the logical brain, and it says that 95% of our decisions are emotional, backed up by the very little logic. And so when people can connect to the message you bring on the day, I think that can make a very big difference. And then after that, you almost share that message, like we said, in a structure or in a manner that's well received by the audience, and that makes it easier for the audience to understand what it is that you want them to know, think, feel, or do after listening to you.
Excellent. And is there many people involved in Toastmasters in Africa?
Yes, absolutely. I think in my own, we are divided into what we call districts. So in Southern Africa alone, we've got about 4,500 members, and I know that in West Africa, that's round about the number. And in East Africa, it's slightly smaller, maybe 1,500. But so we're looking at between, and there's also a region that includes North Africa and the Middle East. So I would say that we have about at least 10,000 Toastmasters members in Africa.
Very good, very good. And did you say that you're looking after Pakistan region as well then, yeah?
Yes. So I was this leadership advisor for our top 4 leaders in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Pakistan. So yes, Pakistan was part of our region.
Excellent, because there's one guy, his name is Rohan Alawala, and he's trying to get everybody to do live streams and everything. And what I've noticed is that there's a lot of young people that are just really trying to push themselves from Pakistan. Doing lots of live kind of podcasts, interviews with people. And I just went on a load of the shows, just one for the experience, but two to kind of help others. And my numbers actually started increasing from Pakistan. So I'd say it's probably early days there as well with the Toastmasters, but I could see it actually taking off a lot with the population that's there.
Yes. I think they only came into being as what we call a small unit as their first stage to becoming a district, I think post 2018. And I remember when we went into the pandemic, they were one of the districts that were quite innovative in terms of, because we had to move our speech contest from physical to online. And you could see that they really stretched themselves and came up with different ways, different innovative ways of presenting themselves online. So they're a growing community that's maturing thick and fast. And yeah, I'm excited for them, for the growth that they are bringing in the world of public speaking.
No, brilliant. So with this mission that you're on to get, 100,000 honest leaders, how can people help you to do that?
Well, I think one of the important things, and speaking of public speaking, is that, as a leader in any form, it's important that you're only a leader if you are able to influence or get people to follow you. But people don't just follow blindly. Well, it happens sometimes, but you would have done something. So there's got to be something that you stand for. And like I said, this continent is one of the richest continents that we have in the world. And I've seen, continents or countries that are far less endowed with resources than we are here in Africa, run by average leaders that do so much better than we are doing on this continent. And so this idea really came about one day when we ran a survey in one of the organizations that I'm part of. And we asked, what are your perceptions on leadership in Africa across board? And the top three words or phrases that came up were old, corrupt, and lack of direction. And that's when, we just had a fascination to say, well, wouldn't it be exciting if we are able to redefine leadership in Africa and develop younger, more ethical, and smarter leaders on the continent? So we then thought, okay, what if we added 1% of our population in leaders that are younger, ethical, and smart? And it was in that time where we thought, okay, 1% of the world's population is like 78 million. And at that time, we didn't even limit it to Africa. Then we said, okay, at that time, one of our team members was starting a YouTube channel. And as you know, to monetize a YouTube channel, one of the requirements is to get 1,000 subscribers. And so they just reached 1,000 subscribers. But they said they shared a fascinating stat that it took them 14 months to actually get 200 subscribers. And after another 2 months, they got to 1,000 subscribers. So we were looking for our 200 subscribers. So we thought 100,000 would be a good start in such an instance. At that time, we had influence in Southern Africa. So we thought, well, the next stage is Africa. So maybe let's just look at developing 100,000 young, ethical, and smart leaders on the continent. And then after that, we thought, let's simplify it. And we thought, let's develop 100,000 honest leaders on the African continent, which is something every time I've spoken has resonated with a lot of people. So how can people participate? Like I said to you, I'm involved with quite a number of projects that help us achieve this mission. The Entrepreneurs Hub, unlike many, venture capital firms and so forth that work with established startups in this continent, there's something we call stomach economics, which is people that get into business to get something to eat. So we tend to work with those kinds of micro business owners so that they can get a livelihood as a starting point. And then if we can leave them at a stage where they can also now start running a proper business and make some profit and be able to employ other people as a start, then I think our mission will be accomplished. So if you want to partner with us in that area, you could. I'm also involved with Toastmasters, like we've just been speaking about, which is a global leader in communication and leadership development. And at Toastmasters, we've got a wide network of branches. And so you could be part of the people that are redefining leadership in Africa by, joining a club near you. And you simply just need to go to toastmasters.org/find a club, and we'll help you find a club. Or as later on, you could always contact me and I'll help you find a club. But I'm also, like I said, I also am in the leadership development space, and I'm always working with senior leaders. And so whatever opportunities you have for people that you want help with in terms of developing effective leaders, the leaders that we need on the continent, that is something that I'm able to do in a number of ways, whether it's through leadership coaching or leadership development programs, or many other facets. So that and many other ideas that you may have in mind, we're open to working with you.
Excellent. And because I've got friends in Africa, and I've looked at history and how, you've been pillaged everything. You've got all the resources, should be the richest continent on the world, but it's not. It's just been abused. And I think the sooner that you stop that, you turn off the tap and kick out them corporations, all these companies that are kind of pretending that they're looking after you, and they're not. And the other thing as well is that the map was actually modified to make it look like Africa was smaller. And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, that just shows the amount of corruption in the world, that the map is actually showing that Africa was way smaller.
Yes. I think if that's one of the things. So, I mean, it's funny because I discovered that 3 years ago, And somebody was saying to me, we need to redo a map that shows the correct scale. It's the second largest continent in the world. But yeah, there's just lots of things that happen. And I think it's important that we've got Africans telling the African stories. But I'm also happy to say that we've received a lot of support externally from people that genuinely care, not even multinational corporations, people that just say, I've got this knowledge with me, I've got this money with me, and we want to invest in making sure that we've got solutions. And so for us, people making history, the movement that's working on redefining leadership in Africa, we don't have we don't have a set fixed way of helping people. We're always looking to partner with people and make possible many different types of projects that can make things possible, and that's something that really excites us.
Brilliant. And I think the fact that you're heavily involved with the Toastmasters, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of talent in Toastmasters. And, if you're able to recruit from, you've mentioned there's like 10,000. Obviously not all of them would get on board, but there's a high percentage. And there's always a kind of turn rate as well. I think we go through a journey with Toastmasters that, some people, this just becomes part of their life. But there's others that go through, they get to a certain stage and they go, yeah, and then they kind of move on to different things. And it's usually actually they become a professional speaker or a coach or something like that. If they, or else, some people, they just go in just to overcome the fear. And once they've done that, they move on. But you've got a constant flood of people that come in that can actually help you on your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our partners are Toastmasters. So that's amazing.
No, brilliant. So, I suppose, with the coaching, so you're coaching as well as part of your business. You might just talk a bit about that.
Okay, yeah. So actually, most of the work that I do is actually in leadership development and leadership coaching. So typically, I get called in when there's a problem in the business. And maybe you've discovered that you've got a talented team on board. You meet with this team, you discuss the goals and aspirations of the organization, and you seem to be in agreement as to what needs to be happening. Maybe you've even trained the team and everything seems like all systems go. But when it comes to execution, nothing seems to happen. And usually I get called in to facilitate the difficult conversations to find out where the wheels are coming off. So what I find I end up doing is that a lot of times, many companies are not quite clear about their strategic intent, their purpose, their mission, their values. Maybe they came into the company and this words were written on the wall, but nobody figured to bother to find out where this came from and what they truly mean to the organization. And so we sometimes start from rewriting or retracing the steps to making sure that you've got a meaningful mission, vision, or values that are still relevant to the organization. And once that happens, we then help the leadership teams to align amongst themselves, because everyone always has an opinion on where things to go. But it's, I think, speaking to the importance of public speaking and the way we present, I think one clear message is always more impactful than having many people speak in different ways. So once we help all the leaders to speak with one voice, usually getting them aligned as a leadership team, that's what I then do. And then after that, they need to take that message to the rest of their teams and their stakeholders. So I also then help them translate that strategic message into tactical language that maybe some of their direct reports work with, and also help them support their direct reports who lead operational teams to actually then tell the person on the ground, what exactly do you want them to do and how does it contribute to the bigger aspect? So most of my work is around strategic alignment, but oftentimes I then have to coach leaders with the speeches they need to give to the organization or to their stakeholders to actually get that message out and have them all speak with one voice towards what they want to do. Also then help them, tackle some of the conversations that matter, from something like gender pay gap within their organization, or just a simple team dynamics issue, to something as a bigger cause as sustainability, which is something that's quite measurable. So I'm there to help leaders with all those types of things, and to tackle the conversations that matter to them.
Oh, excellent. And I mean, I've come across it over the years, a lot of these companies with mission statements, and I've seen one of the farmer ones that I worked on in construction, and a lot of it is a joke. They have this mission statement up and it means nothing. They treat the people terrible, and what you're doing is good. And I just happen to have it on my desk, is a book, Vivid Vision by Cameron Harold. And he's basically talking about that, where you're actually sharing the vision, like what you've just said, that everybody's involved. And also the way he's doing it is like telling the suppliers as well. Because if your mission is to maybe like triple, that your suppliers will get on board. You might even get better discounts, or they're aware that they'll need to vamp up if they want to kind of continue. And then, like he's mentioning, and I mean, it's kind of that a percentage will actually leave because they're not on board with this. But that's good, because then the people that stay, are part of the mission, and the whole company then starts to develop, and then they can pay more because of the success that they're getting.
Yeah, and I think it's also, people, and this is why partly stuff like presentation and public speaking becomes very important, because I think a lot of people are insecure about the value they have to add to the table, such that they hide behind jargon or big words. And so a lot of times I find that a lot of mission statements, visions, and purposes are superficial, wanting to fit into the world. But what I've always learned in my life is that we may not be able to define the word authentic, or we may not be able to define certain important things in our lives, but people can smell inauthenticity from far. And speaking about vivid visions, I was inspired by one of the non-profit visions that I came across. It actually came to me at a time when I'd had one of the senior political leaders in South Africa who had shared that some of the people in one province of South Africa were still sharing a water drinking source with animals. And we're in 2022, and we're talking about a multi-planetary world and taking things there. And so when you've got organizations, for example, that are out there to ensure that every human being on this planet has access to life's most basic need, clean drinking water, you see, that's very clear. Or you look at the World Food Program, their objective is zero hunger. That's very clear. Exactly what they're all about. And suddenly the organization, immediately through its vision, objectives, or mission, can easily attract the right people into the organization, rather than a phenomena we're seeing these days where organizations attract anyone and everyone, depending on how much money they get from that. And so it's like a bus, going to, it's like maybe a plane. Let's use a plane. That's easier. It's like a plane, and it's got some people that are coming down to South Africa, some that are going to Russia, some that are going to the West Coast in the United States, and some that are going to Poland. You see, it just becomes chaotic. And I think it's important that we as organizations, we adopted direction and we know where we're going, and we could start another company or leave other people to service the other routes. Otherwise, if you're trying to service everyone, it becomes difficult for you to get someone onto the plane, because I don't have guarantees that the pilot will first stop at my destination and that the routing will be something effective. So I think that's why it's important to have those vivid visions. I love that title. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and just on that, with creating these 100,000 leaders, some of these organizations are infiltrated and they pretend that they're actually doing good for humanity, and it's a case of we replace because I don't think that you actually just kick them out. You either create an alternative or you get the right leaders in, and then it actually can do. Because what they write on paper, or what they go in, if you go into like say World Economic Forum and all these different things, they all sound fantastic what they're planning, but what they actually do is totally different. So I think you get the right people, the right pilot, he'll take them to the right destination, and everything then will be a lot better. And I think we'll see Africa shining like it should be.
Absolutely.
Listen, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Frank, you might let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Well, I think you could get hold of me on LinkedIn, probably one of the most active social platforms I'm part of. Or you can email me. My email is frank@franklyspeaking.co. There's nothing else. It's frank@franklyspeaking.co. And yeah, share with me, what ideas you have, what you do. Speaking of which, my personal vision as Frank is to have a world where people are able to live fully anyway. I don't want people to ever have to say, oh, I have to go there to make my dreams come true. I have to do this for my dreams to come true, which is why I'm doing this. I've got this mission of 100,000 honest leaders on the African continent, because I believe it can add to helping people live fully from anywhere. And so for whatever conversations where you think, you could share some ideas with me, or I could add value to you, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm always happy to connect.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
No problem. So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. As mentioned, we're on BitChute, YouTube, and my podcasting coaching, as well as the other podcasts, can be found on bio.link/podcaster. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and subscribe. Really helps. Until next week, take care.